Welcome to the Success Pick and Mix podcast. I'm your host, Nicky Raby, a professional pick and mixer. I'm a personal brand coach, a speaker, an actor, a creator, and a podcaster. I'm on a mission to help you find and create your version of success. Your pick and mix of life and business on your terms. A blend that complements your personality, your goals, and your circumstances. Since 2018, I've been sharing interviews and mini episodes to help you unlock your next step, to make it real and make it happen. Round here, we dream big. We go for the ideal version. We talk about money and make moves our future selves would be proud of. This podcast is free and available for you whenever you need it. So do rate, review, and subscribe for new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. nickyraby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices and availability, go to nickyraby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests. Now, on to today's episode. In today's episode, I talk to Steph Douglas, who is the founder of Don't Buy Her Flowers. She launched the business in 2014, and as you'll see and as you'll hear, the business has really gone from strength to strength since that opening. And in the episode, she's very practical. She shares lots about building a business plan, creating your vision, finance, how to build a team, how to go slowly but surely, and also how to work with friends and family. It's a really juicy one, and it's perfect if you're thinking about launching a business or monetizing a passion project, or just generally trying to go to the next level and really get clear on what it is that you are building. Which brings me on to two other things. The first is I have relaunched my Facebook group, Dreaming and Doing with Nicky Raby. If you want to come and discuss the episode or get live trainings from me or just generally hang out and be in a really great supportive space, come and find us on Facebook, Dreaming and Doing with Nicky Raby. I would love to have you over there. And secondly, I have a couple of private coaching sessions coming up and some events that I'm doing online and in London. So you can check out my coaching page and my events page on my fancy new website. Go and have a look, see what you think. Anyway, enough waffling from me. Let's get into the episode. Here's Steph. Hi, Steph. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm really well. How are you?
Good. I'm okay, thank you. Not too bad today.
Good. Excellent. Well, if people don't know you, would you just start by introducing yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Steph Douglas. I run a business called Don't Buy Her Flowers. And we started as gifts for new mums because when I had my first baby 7 years ago, I received 8 bunches of flowers and just thought it was a bit nuts that that's the go-to gift when you have a baby because it's something to care for, and obviously you are spent. Well, I know I was overwhelmed and just completely spent, and these things felt like another thing to do or look after, and I just didn't have that in me. So that was kind of where the idea came, and then my background is brand and marketing, so I went back to work part-time. And then very quickly was pregnant with my second, Mabel. So went back to work for basically 9 months and then went off again. And then it was during that maternity leave that I kind of started to think about it a bit more about the business. And also I was thinking, how is work going to work? The kind of racing back and forth and trying to get to the nursery on time and with 2 kids and that kind of juggle. And I did go back to work. And I think it's quite important to say that, so basically I had the idea 7 years ago and I didn't start it until 3.5 years later, 4 years later.
That's so good, because that thing of like just waking up and going, gosh, I had an idea, and then suddenly I had a multi-million-pound business. That was cool. I
didn't have any inclination to run a business, so I didn't. The idea basically formed, as I say, because I was just like, man, this is hard. Having babies is hard. Why are people giving me something to look after? Much as it was very kind of them to send me flowers, and then I would give friends. I'd send them a magazine and some chocolate in a jiffy bag, or I would leave a meal on their doorstep if they lived nearby, and they were so grateful. And then that's when it kind of started to form. And the more I'm quite kind of open and honest, and I can't really hide what I'm feeling. So I would talk about motherhood and how I'd found it quite hard, and how just the smallest kindness really helps you through some of the dark times. You know, when someone says, "How are you?" and you're doing really well, you're kind of, "Thank you."
Yeah.
And so it kind of was percolating, I guess. That idea was bubbling along, and then at the same time I was back at work, and I started to look around a bit and could see there was a gap. And I started a blog. So I went back to work after I had Mabel. So I had 2 babies, gone back to work part-time, both times, 3 days a week. Didn't feel brilliant at work. Felt quite like because I was a manager, but I wasn't there 5 days a week. So some of the team knew more than I did. You know, it's quite a tricky one, I think. And I tried not to look at work in between. You know, I worked those 3 days and then wasn't trying to look at anything. So I was kind of always out of the loop a bit. And then I started this blog because it was writing about motherhood, and I was like, if I can do that, that would be a step towards starting a business. Just starting a business felt too massive.
Yes.
So that was kind of how everything started, and that went really, really well. So it was called Sisterhood and all that, and it still lives on the Don't Buy Her Flowers website. And then we launched in November 2014. So I basically used the blog. It gave me the confidence. I was like, I can do this. There's lots of people who find motherhood equally as hard as me, because at the time, not many people were doing the whole kind of like honest parent, you know, saying how they really found it, and being able to say, God, I feel really vulnerable and I'm finding this really hard, was quite new at the time.
Yeah.
So that's when you had like, Mumsy Mum and Hurrah Gin and all those guys. Everyone kind of was starting at the same time. But yeah, it gave me the confidence to quit my job, and I started the business in November 2014, so 3.5 years ago. And then really quickly it kind of grew to become more than just gifts for new mums. So now, as it is now, we're kind of thoughtful gifts, and it's for lots and lots. So 25% are sent to new mums, and the rest are kind of bereavement or get well or just birthdays or have a good week, really varied reasons. And yes, and then I've just had another baby. So that Frank was born in November, so he is now 5 months.
Wow, life is full and busy and ever changing.
Well, the business is at a point where I'm sure we'll go into more detail, but I don't have to be running it day to day. So I started the business from home. I packed boxes in my spare room. I did that kind of 2 years. But where it is now, there's a warehouse in Gloucestershire and a team, and so it runs without me, but I still obviously need to be kind of driving things forward all the time.
How does that feel now to sort of...
Really weird. No, it's good. It was initially very strange. So what happened was the business ran from home, and after about 8 or 9 months, I realised that I couldn't do it all because I was packing. I was like doing everything, so dealing with supplies and stock and packing and promoting it and the PR, everything.
Wow.
As I think is probably pretty normal for most people when they're starting out, unless they've taken investment.
Yeah.
And I was about 8, 9 months in, and I was spending all my time packing. So orders were coming in, but all I could do was pack them. So I felt like I wasn't driving anything forward or kind of growing it. And it was growing month on month, but I just could see that wasn't the best use of my time. And actually it was my friend Charlotte, who's a photographer, who was like, you are worth more by the hour than you'll need to pay somebody to pack, kind of thing. It was like working that out. And that was a real moment of clarity, where it was like, if you pay someone, I don't know, £8 an hour. So I had some girls from the local college would come and pack at my house. So they'd come after college. They started doing it a couple of times a week, and then they did about 1.5 years. And towards the end, they were doing like every day, one of them would come and pack boxes.
And actually, that's a really great job to have. And, you know, going to somebody's home, I've done all kinds of ropey jobs in mustard-coloured uniforms and all sorts of things.
No, and it's really funny because I felt really apologetic about it. And then one of my friends came around, she's like, Steph, and I've known her since we were babies. And she was like, Steph, when we were 17, if we'd have had a job going to someone's house, packing a few nice boxes, writing a nice message on it, like, that would have been a dream job.
Yeah.
And it's straight from college, on their way home from college. Like, they didn't have to get here, and it wasn't late at night. And I was quite flexible. As long as they came, it didn't really matter when. So yeah, she was like, this is a good job. Like, that's good for somebody, which I think is really important, actually, because I did this session with Mother Pucker last week, Anna, where we had lots of women coming in and talking for like 3 hours. It was like speed dating for 3 hours with women asking questions about business, and loads of them needed help. They needed to take that next step, but all they could think was that they were going to have to employ someone full time.
Yeah.
And it was like, there's so many options between not having any help and having someone full time.
That it can be that mindset shift as well of like, this is my gig, this is the only way that things can happen. But moving from that being a worker within your business into like founder, CEO, leader, badass, you know, it's a shift.
Like, now I don't want to be packing boxes. It isn't the best use of my time, and I did it, you know, I did the graft, and that's great, but there's loads of other things I need to be doing to progress it. And the same with kind of social media. That was another one I've now got Nicola, who you've had on the podcast, right, who does our social media, and we've got I've got my friend Hannah, who does all our customer services, and she's now like 3 days a week, which she splits over the week. And like we're slowly adding more and more people to take on the roles, which mean my role becomes smaller in a way, but it doesn't become less. It just becomes more sort of focused.
Yes.
And I think that's what you have to do. It's kind of picking off the first thing was packing, and then it was customer services, and then it was the whole operation. So all the supplier and all that kind of the whole piece is managed by actually my brother in their warehouse in Gloucestershire, because he said to me randomly one day, I could run the business from here, I'd love to be involved. And I was like, hang on a minute.
Sign this immediately.
And it was actually really quick, and he gave up a proper job, and we had to obviously like match his salary. That was our first proper, you know, full-time employee, but it's worked out really well, because he's now, he said, does it feel weird? Well, I went back at Mother's Day. So Mother's Day has always been a really big deal for us in terms of like the volume of orders. And it used to be me doing it from my house and driving around manically trying to find ribbon because I'd run out. And it was all so mental the first couple of years. And then my brother has done 2 Mother's Day now. And the first one I kind of was around, and I would be helping with stock or whatever. And this one I went back with Frank, my baby, and I was kind of like, looking at the shelves, going, you look a bit low. And he's like, no, that's coming tomorrow. Oh, okay. Do you need some more tea? Is there something? He's like, no, that's coming. Okay. Like, I was so redundant.
Oh.
And Hannah, who's there, was saying, does it feel weird? Are you all right? And I was like, I think this is a really good thing. I just need to get my head around it. And it is. It's really, really good. Like, you don't see CEOs involved at that level of like what stock needs to be ordered. You know how it works. You need to be aware of it, but you shouldn't be doing it. So it was a big shift, but Absolutely. A really good one.
Yeah. And what's it like working with your brother? Has your relationship changed since the business has grown, and you're taking on, you're not probably just doing nudges under the table or like fighting for the last fish finger or something like maybe you did when you were kids. How is that in a business relationship?
It's gone really well. I think it's really, I think it's down to personality type, isn't it? So we have never been the kind of brother and sister we used to physically fight when we were kids, but we'd never have a falling out. And I think we agree on quite a lot of things just generally in the world. And we speak all the time. So it's changing that we speak all the time. A little bit less at the moment because I'm supposedly on maternity leave, and he's kind of just been really good at just getting on with it. But yeah, we had a planning session earlier this year, and we're kind of it's a different kind of relationship. I don't think you could do it with everybody. I don't think you could do it with all your siblings. I think it very much depends on the people, you know. And he's taking instruction from his younger sister, which some people wouldn't be able to do, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think my brother still eye rolls at me, but my brother actually lives across the road now, bizarrely. He runs a pub, moved to London. So, yeah, it's funny when you're seeing these sort of sibling relationships play out in adult life. But still, yeah, there is that kind of like, really? Can't believe you're saying that. What are you doing?
God, and they will take the mick out of me very happily, because so the customer services, Hannah, who is one of my bridesmaids, like she's a best friend. And we also have Pam, who's involved in accounting and packing, and she also was one of my bridesmaids. So I'm literally keeping it really, really close. But what's really interesting, so I know that people say, oh, does it work with friends and family? I'm not physically based with them, so they haven't got me there every day, so that probably helps. But also, they're really passionate about it.
Yes.
I think when it's your own business, that one of the most terrifying things about employing people is that them not really caring, them not feeling that. Whereas these guys, like Mother's Day, because the orders were so manic and there were so many coming in, but instead of them being like, oh God, we've got to work harder, they were excited because they could see the growth. And it was when it was snowing, so they were trekking in the snow on a Saturday because they couldn't get them on the right, like on foot. And which I'm so lucky to have. And I'm really pleased that we kind of made those decisions, because it wasn't something I always thought in my head would work. That wasn't part of the big plan. But I think you do want people that work for you, and so either you've got to pay them well, you've got to respect them, you've got to everyone's got kids, so we've got to think ahead to half terms and holidays, because they're all at school. And I don't want to be like, well, you just have to find childcare, because I know how precious that time is, but we still have jobs that need doing. So Chaz is doing really well at managing, like over the summer holidays, everyone's got 2-week period, so they don't overlap too much. But so someone will always be there, but they've already thought of it.
Brilliant.
And I've kind of said from the start, and this ties in with Anna and the flex appeal stuff and flexible working. For me, I don't care if they're sitting at the desk from 9 till 5 or 10 till 2 or whatever hours they do. It just means the job just needs to be done.
Yep.
So there's certain things, like we have a next day delivery service, and that closes at 12 every day. So someone's got to be there to make sure that those orders go out next day. But everything else, pretty much, they can do on their time. A lot of it is online. Obviously, it's an online business. So Hannah actually today, her kid's sick, so she's like, I'm going to just keep an eye on things from home, because, and it's not, no one's taking the mick, because it's working for them.
And you're really managing those expectations as well, and sort of saying, look, these are the fundamental things that need to happen, but anything around that is kind of wiggle room. And I know that it's something that sometimes when we step into that leadership role, that we kind of, I know certainly when I've brought people on to help me, sometimes in the beginning I was so vague and a bit like, oh, I don't mind, or whatever works for you. But actually I have to keep coming back to those fundamental things and really lead from a powerful place. And actually then you get that respect, and then you can make it work for everybody.
Well, what's really interesting, I think Chaz initially started, I think he was, God, it's already a bit vague, but I think he was doing like a 4-day week to start with, or we had to, because it was such a leap to suddenly be, a full-time person. I think we started with a 4-day week, so he was finishing earlier and stuff like that, and like moving his hours around. And then we shifted to it being the full-time role. And I remember him saying on a Tuesday and Wednesday, I think it is, he leaves early because he wants to pick his kids up. So him and his wife have worked out a week where there's certain days she's there and certain days he's there, and that, which is great. That's what it needs to be. It can't just be a woman who is the flexible one. You've got to have it both. So that's really important. So he has to leave at 3 or whatever to go make sure he gets his kids. And when he first said that, I was like, oh, but you'll make up the hours. And then I heard myself and was like, oh, and then I said to him, sorry, no, I'm being a knob. Like, sorry, I'm no, obviously he knows what job he's got to do and he does the hours. Like he will go in early when we have a busy week or a busy day or whatever it is, he'll be there early, he'll work late, he'll log back on in the evening if he has to. But it was funny because that was my automatic response. Yes. Like, oh, well, what are the set hours? And then it was like, no, that doesn't need to work like that. But it's a big shift for your mindset if you're used to going. Well, my old job was going into an office from 9 till 5, usually longer hours than that. But that was what it was supposed to be. You wouldn't have just swanned off at 3 because it would have been swanning off. It wouldn't have been, well, I'll work later. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think it's that thing that, especially in the online world, that sometimes things are thrown at you where you're like, oh my goodness, the website's gone down or something's happened. And invariably people end up coming on board or picking up calls or doing things anyway. So yeah, just having that wiggle room is so important. And I bet he's not only going to appreciate that, but his kids are. And that, that dad is very much part of the mix. I feel really strongly about this my partner and I are both freelance, and when we thought about having children, it was very important that we were equal. And apart from breastfeeding, which I think he would struggle with slightly for himself, but generally I wanted it to be that mix for our child of us being able to do different things. And invariably sometimes we have those gender roles of I'm not great with bins, he's better with that, but I'm good at washing or whatever. But generally in terms of cooking and sorting stuff out and making the house work, that's been really key for us.
It's really challenging, I think. My husband has a job he works in finance, he travels quite a lot, and he has to, he helped fund the business, and we're reliant on, at the moment, it tends to be with the business stage we're at, which I think is another important thing to mention. All the money that comes in, we need to reinvest in the business. And at the moment, that might be operationally, or it might be on taking on new people or whatever it is. So it's not like, even though it's doing really well, it's not like there's pools of money coming in. And so his salary is really important and his job is really important. So it's a really tricky mindset because we tend to row about it quite but it's not big. He has to have his job. We as a family, we need him to have that job and that salary. And so it's really tricky, because I'll then feel very resentful. I'm in a funny stage at the moment because I'm at home all the time, or a lot more with the baby. And that, again, I think it shifts each time you have a kid, where you might have we had got a better balance. We were definitely in a more balanced place. And then suddenly I'm at home all the time. And that's really hard for women, I think.
Yeah, it feels like you've been grounded. That sense of everybody else is going out and you're the one who sort of has that. Sometimes Matt works long hours, and I feel like sometimes that sense of, gosh, I can't even go to the shop and buy a pint of milk or go for a walk around the block or a run or whatever, that you're sort of, once you're in and that's it.
Yeah, and in lots of ways I don't want to be doing anything, but I still resent that he can.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's not like I'm going, oh, I just want to go to Ministry of Sound. Can you let me and groove with some young'uns? It's not that at all.
Nights out fill me with anxiety. I can't do that. I can't.
No, exactly. The thought of people going, let's just see how the evening goes. You're like, really? No, but I've got to get some kip in. Come on.
Yeah.
When you had the idea of bringing it to life, because I know sometimes there can be that sort of chat about, I just had the idea and then the next thing I had the business. What were the first steps that you took in order to put the wheels in motion? You had the blog, but
I had the blog, but when it comes to the business, one of the first things I did, I looked at what was already around, so kind of competitors and other people, what other people were doing. And then I started looking at different products and stuff and thinking about what we were going to do. But one of the key things was a business plan for me.
Right.
And I know it varies. I know lots of people don't go down that route. But for me, it was just having it written down in black and white, what it was. And I think what I found quite useful about business plan is it's got kind of like headings that you've got to fill in. So if I like, my background's brand and marketing, so I was really comfortable with that bit, but probably less so with like finance or employees, or what's the next step to that. So if you've got a business plan, you've got to put those things in. And it had at the back, it had a space, I had a space for competitors. So I wrote a bit about who was out there. And actually, I found my business plan the other day, and none of the competitors that I was worried about at that point are existing anymore. They're all, wow. Which is really interesting, which is a really good lesson in just don't worry about what anyone else is doing. I mean, you've got to have a bit of awareness, but then forget it. Just get on, get on with what you need.
You can't control those. You can only control what you're doing. And I know that I've seen, blogs or coaches or actors come, I've been an actor for 25 years and I've seen a lot of people come and go, and I'm still doing those sort of things. But you can easily, especially if you're in that, I'm not quite ready to share it yet, or I'm not really sure what this is, you can get that sense of comparison. But you don't necessarily need to, really, because you'll put your flavour on it, won't you?
Exactly. And I think, that's really important, not to do what someone else is already doing, but also not to worry too much what they're doing. Use it to drive yourself forward. But yeah, so that first bit was the business plan, and then I was like thinking about what I wrote things in there that we haven't even done yet. So it was kind of the big idea and where it could go, and knowing that it was more than just one idea. So at the time, the business plan was very much focused on gifts for new mums. And we did mostly, for the first probably 2 years, keep the tone. We made it people aware that you could buy it for other things, but we tried to keep it fairly tight to that idea, just to whilst we established what it was and the idea, which I think, again, is really important. And that was advice of any business advice I was given. The main thing was people who've done it before saying, stay focused, don't keep small, keep tight, stay focused. So we launched with 3 packages, and we've now got kind of 17, and there's loads of different options and add-ons and all those extra things, and gifts for kids you can add in and all of that. But the beginning was really tight because, again, financially, I didn't have the money. So what was interesting, at this business chat last week, there was somebody who was starting a business, and they were talking about a package business, but they had 13 as their initial what they were going to launch with.
An unlucky number.
Yeah. And I was like, you need to pare it right back, and the thing is, you're worried that you're not giving I think at the beginning you're thinking it needs to be everything because I want the customers to come. But actually, if they buy into the idea and you've got something on there that piques their, there's enough on there, you want to have somewhere to go with it.
Yes.
So, and that was advice a friend of mine was one of the founders of Graze.com, who do the snack boxes that come through the letterbox. So he's done like ridiculously well. There were 7 of them that founded it, but he was like, you need somewhere to go. Nobody starts with their final product. Their business model changed massively from when they launched, and that's so having it as new mums and there only being 3 options, that's fine because it's changed quite dramatically in 3.5 years, and I'm sure it will keep changing. But that, if you can stay focused, that really helps that beginning bit, because it's going to cost you less because you need less stuff. But also it just really helps you to sense check what you're doing and keep going back to the original idea if it's really tight.
Yeah, it helps the customer as well to make a decision of going, okay, especially if they're a sleep deprived parent going, oh, blimey, this feels so overwhelming. If they've got 3 options to choose from, it's so easy. And I say a lot to my coaching clients, sometimes people are trying to be too bespoke too early on, of like, I could do anything for you. Whereas actually, if you give people a choice of stuff that you do really well, it's much easier for them to move forward and ultimately pay you and get the money through the door. That's so important.
Yeah, and I think even like business, you could start with one product. I know if you're doing wholesale, like often business, retailers will be like, oh, we need a whole range and everything, and that's another massive pressure. It depends what the business is, but you can still keep it really tight. I think that and then you learn so much from that first product or first couple of products or first service that you provide. You learn so much at that beginning. It's like a massive learning curve. Just as soon as you've pressed, as soon as you've gone public, it's just nuts. So I think you want to do that with as limited amount of things go wrong as possible, I guess.
What was that like when you press publish for the first time of like, okay, guys, we're doing it. Let's go.
Really hungover. So I'd been to a big Mumsnet event. The site was ready and I had the products in my house ready for the first week. I had the packaging, we were all set to go. And I was just holding off. It was really weird. Because I just was nervous. I was really scared. And I'd written a blog post like announcing what it was and explaining it and going, where the idea had come from. And then I can't remember, but I think a couple of friends were like, "What are you doing? Just get on with it." And we pressed publish, and the website crashed because everyone that was following the blog shared it. But it was, people were like, "Yes, this is this is a really good idea." Just the idea of something other than flowers, and all the packages are about looking after. They're meant to be thoughtful. They're meant to be encourage someone to have a little sit down, have a rest, have a hot cup of tea with a thermos flask, whatever it is. This is about you taking time, and it was more powerful than I realised, because I suppose in a time where things are moving to, we're all really busy, and then there is this awareness of self-care, which I know is kind of bandied around a lot now. But that idea of looking after yourself, also encouraging other people to look after themselves and being kind to yourself and all that stuff, it kind of, it is really fits with that. And people were really emotional when they received their packages. We were getting all these messages back that people had cried when they'd received them, which wasn't something that had ever crossed my mind, to be honest. But it's because they're lovely gifts, but it's not ridiculously expensive. We've got more lavish options if you want cashmere socks and you want to add a food voucher from Cook and all that. You can add you can spend more money, but the basic premise is, a magazine and some chocolate and some tea and some, a note saying you're doing really well, look after yourself, kind of, or whatever the person writes. But that's generally what happens, and it just comes at a point when people really need to know that someone's thinking of them.
Yeah, that sense of, I helped a lady, I could sort of see her hovering around the bottom of the escalator at Warren Street yesterday, and she kind of had the buggy and the baby, and I could see her thinking, I don't know how to do this, and I don't know how to get the buggy up, and I was on my own, and I said, if you want me to help you, if you want to carry the baby and I'll do the buggy. Well, I think she almost snogged me because she was just so happy that that she didn't have to have that embarrassing thing.
It's so horrible, like that, but especially it's still hard with the third, but that first one, you're so vulnerable and it's so overwhelming, and it's not a terrible thing, it's an amazing, wonderful thing having a baby, but it is bloody hard. It's brutal, and this is what those first few weeks with Frank, and when he wasn't sleeping, I was just looking at my husband going, oh my God, I'd forgotten, but it's brutal. You've got nothing left, you're stripped totally bare, you don't feel like you, and all those things. And so I guess where we kind of came in at that point with the packages was somebody saying, I know this is really hard. I think you deserve it. Not a blanket for the baby, not another cuddly toy.
They don't need anything really, because they'll always have more than enough.
Exactly. They will. And I think so someone going, this is, and I think people are more aware of this now, even in 3.5 years, than it's more talked about, but at the time as well. Just that. And then there's always new mums coming up. So it just been listening. Now I'm back in this new mum phase. It's really interesting because I just listened to a podcast with Angela Scanlon. She's 6 weeks in with her first baby, and it comes as a complete shock. And it's it wasn't a shock to me, but it was still overwhelming. And I think that you forget what that feels like, and there's always new people coming into it. So we're all a bit wizened to it, or a bit whatever we are, bedraggled by it. But there's always new fresh faces coming in who had so much hope, and then they're like, this is really hard, what happened? So I think it's important to keep embracing them, and that's probably why things have done really well.
Yeah, I messaged my friend the other day who just had a baby, sort of about 2 weeks in, because I didn't want to sort of, go in there kind of on day 3, when she's sort of weeping or anything. And I just said, if you're finding any of this hard, please know that we all have done, but not enough people say it. And she was like, oh, phew, I thought I was the only one, because, you're consumed by friends and family and people just dropping by to come and see the baby. Whereas if you'd had a hip operation, you'd have your leg up and people wouldn't be coming round to your house necessarily.
No, I think that's so important. Well, I wrote a blog post called about pulling up the drawbridge.
I sent it to her. I loved it. It was so good.
I've had so many messages, and it's really, in some ways it's really sad, because there's so many people saying, I wish I'd done that. And there's lots as well now saying, I've been following you, I read this and I'm having a baby and I'm going to do it. But there were lots who have had their babies and regret not being able to do that, or just finding themselves bundling along and then going, oh God, the first 3 months have whizzed by and I haven't just spent time just sitting, because it's really soon life cracks on and you're suddenly back in it, and you think, which is why I keep trying to bring myself back into maternity leave, because otherwise I think it's going to be, it will suddenly have gone past.
Yeah. Absolutely. I just wanted to ask you one more thing, which was, how have you, I guess for you, in sort of moving the business forward, what have you done in terms of, I guess if you only have small windows of time in the day, I mean, I know your older two are at school now, but how did you know what to focus on in terms of growth, not just running the day-to-day business? So I think sometimes we could be sold like, oh, it's a great opportunity, or it's great exposure, or things like that. But how do you trust your instincts in that way of what you should be focusing on and where you should put your time and efforts?
I think I've learned what I should be spending more time on now, and it's taken a while. And I think at the beginning I probably didn't, but for me, the focus at the beginning was to make people. I knew I had the products and the idea and the website, and for me it was getting customers. So it was finding what worked for that, and a lot of it was social media. Continuing to write blogs, doing interviews, and we managed to do well in with Google and search and stuff. I did just a lot. There's so many blogs and podcasts, or people who want to hear your story or whatever. And I think offering writing for those, or offering to do things that all of those different websites and all their audiences are then going to at some point see you. So that was a big thing for me to focus on when I was, and that's why I needed someone else to do the packing, because I wasn't doing enough of that initially, or suddenly all my time was taken up packing.
Yeah.
So a lot of my time has been spent on the kind of promotion things, but I think it's also playing to your strengths. So as I said, my background is brand and marketing. My very first job was in PR, so I feel comfortable in that and know I can do that bit of it.
Yes.
But if that wasn't my skill set, then I guess I would focus on whatever it was that I was best at, and bring someone in. The first, when you're thinking what you want to outsource, or you're just drowning, it's like the first thing to get rid of is probably a thing that either takes up too much of your time, or it's just not your strength.
Yeah. And
I know I did all the social media for the first pretty much 3 years. And I didn't do it brilliant. I didn't always do it brilliantly. We've got a great following, but getting Nicola involved, it was at that point where I was like, I'm not doing this strategically it's not strategic. I'm just broadcasting stuff.
Yes.
I'm not. And she was able to come in with a strategy, and I had to just kind of let that bit go. And I know lots of business owners say, oh, I didn't want to give that bit up, and I didn't want to give. It's like, but if you're not brilliant, if it's not your thing, and you need to be spending your time on other stuff, if you want to grow, you kind of have to.
You have to be really bold and strict with yourself, because otherwise you can, and I know, like, I've only still got Monday and Thursday of sort of proper nursery hours. And if I don't check myself, I will wreck myself on those days. If I'm suddenly, you know, when people send you things that are urgent, you really have to question whether they are or not, or put boundaries and, you know, turn off your notifications, because otherwise you can just literally sit and faff around all day. And then suddenly you're like, oh no, I haven't done any of the things that I needed to do.
Yeah, and being real, that's so true. And because, you know, if you're running a business, it's never ending. You are never going to be done. And I think that's something I learned. That first 2 years I found really hard, because it was just chasing my tail. Like, I was just running along, like there was no strategy to it, really. It was kind of like go. Then opportunity come in, yep, take it, go. And then I think you get to a point, but I needed to. I think there's a balance, because I think if you're trying to get something off your ground, you are going to have to work really, really hard, and you do all those hours, and it's going to be really tough. But things like, I wasn't going to forgo family holiday, and I know I've spoken with people who've been, I haven't had a holiday for 3 years. Well, I didn't start this to never spend time with my family. And so,
I bet there are some people that go, right, I'm going to start a business. These kids are driving me crackers.
Yeah. Well, and but what we had to do for the first couple of years, if I went on holiday, we had to put a note on the website saying we've taken a holiday.
Yeah.
And I was always like, oh God, that feels so awful, because if someone's come to the site, that's potentially you're losing a customer. It's like, okay, but they'll either come back. I think we put a discount for people that ordered in that time or whatever it was, but I needed a holiday. Like, we needed that time.
Yeah.
So you have to be really strict with yourself about why you did this. And I think we wrote down what success was, and one of the things that I wrote, and it was before we'd launched, one of the things I wrote was to be with my, you know, to have the family, to be able to balance the family, and, you know, be there at some of the pickups and drop-offs. I wasn't going to just get a nanny and never be there.
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself that, though, because sometimes the work is so big, there's so much, that you can get distracted, and then you're going off down a path where you're like, hang on, why was I doing this again? Like, I don't want, that's not my choice to not be there. I've got to do that bit. So it's a really funny thing, but I think writing down what success is, because it isn't necessarily having the biggest business or the most money, or, you know, you've got to look at all those things.
Yeah, well, that's why I started this podcast, because there are a lot of these things of, you know, banded around the 7-figure business or the 6-figure month or whatever it might be. But it's like, but what does that mean? You know, none of us are doing that to go, oh, lovely, we've slogged our guts up to, like, just get huge amounts of money. But if you're not doing the things of, you know, having date nights, or, you know, if you haven't eaten a meal that's not been at your desk, the table with your partner for a while, then it's like, hang about, you know, it kind of stops there. One final question: where would you like to be in 5 years' time, in business or in life, or maybe at the body holiday, as we talked on Instagram the other day? Oh, that place is so amazing. I love it.
So amazing. Yeah, I need to go back. That's where I want to be in 5 years. No, I think I've got loads of plans for the business. I think I want to have a bigger, you know, I want to get more people involved. I've got my eye on a couple of people that I've already kind of spoken with. I want to grow the team. I think just continue, you know, we've grown month on month pretty much. We've doubled every year, and I can see that as a path to keep going on. And we're growing different areas. So, like, the corporate market has grown without us really doing it. Oh, it's Frank just waking up.
Hey, Frank.
The corporate market has grown for us without us really focusing on it. So I think that's something that we could do a lot more with. And it could almost become an alongside business, if that makes sense. So this is people in offices sending gifts, or holding events and needing packages of some kind. And we've been doing more and more of that, which has been great, alongside the kind of consumer-facing stuff.
Amazing. Watch this space. Well, thank you, Steph. Please go and see Frank and do what you need to do. But thank you so much for for just sharing your story and keeping it real, not only in this chat, but also on Instagram as well. You've been such a source of inspiration, and those moments where you're standing at 5 to 3, having been up at 5 to 1 and knowing that you'll be up at 5 to 5 again, and all of these things, just having people who share their story and speak honestly about it. It's so reassuring, and it stops you trying to kick your husband. Your turn.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you haven't already, feel free to rate, review, and subscribe for all the brand new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. nickyraby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices, availability, or just to have a chat with me, go to nickyraby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests, and I'll see you next time.